Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Cunningham Township Board for Monday, June 3rd, 2019. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown, Hazen,
Here.
Hersey,
Here.
Jacobson,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Roberts,
Here.
Wu,
Here.
Chair Marlin.
Here. Next up is minutes of the previous meeting from May 6, 2019. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Jared, seconded by Sharice. Any corrections? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
those opposed? That motion passes. Any additions to the agenda? Okay. Public participation. I don't have any public input cards. Committee to verify bills. Danielle?
So for June 3rd, for the town fund, we have $41,238.12. For the general assistance fund, we have $58,791.10. And that brings us to a total of $100,029.22. Happy to answer any questions.
I'll move approval of the funds.
I'll second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Dennis. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Reports of officers.
I'll be quick because I know it's a long evening for you all. Our general assistance participants are up to 114, up from 106. We just bounce up and down. So at this point, I don't have concerns. I don't think we've reached past 115. And you can see the breakdown here. Homeless assistance, we had a record low number of requests this last month. I don't know why, but 3 households served so far. Typically, we have somewhere between 6 and 12. And let's see, I just wanted to ask the council, and I believe you'll discuss it at when you're convened as council, to delay the social service grants decision. And I've laid out the reason here. Just wanted to let you know that all 6 of our staff have been trained in the use of the statewide referral network. We're really excited to post all our homeless and disabled participants with the network to access housing here locally. And then we had 150 people at our Greens on Green Township Garden launch. We bought food for 200, and it went an hour early, but I do think folks were hungry, so I think it was about 150. We planted over 60 seedlings in containers donated by the community. And our next event is going to be the Self-Care Community Repair Wellness Fair, Saturday, June 29th from 3 to 6 p.m. There'll be haircuts, weaves, acupuncture, massage, nail care, and kids' activities. You all are welcome to join us, as is the public.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Did Wayne have a report? Or are we going to wait on him?
I think I just texted him because I think he was thinking we were going into closed session, but we're actually going to discuss the budget. So hopefully when we get in, I don't think he has a separate report from the budget this evening. But yeah, I think his phone's not working.
Okay. Let's see, any unfinished business? I don't believe there is. New business, first is discussion of the annual budget for fiscal year 2020.
Great, so if you direct your attention to the presentation, I have cut it down just a bit for time, but I do want to make sure that the public has context for the budget numbers. We originally thought that we could pass the budget this evening, but because of the provisions around public notice needing 30 days, and there was less than 30 days between 2 meetings, we actually will ask for your approval July 1st. So tonight is simply a discussion. We put it on file at the last month's meeting, so you've had a month to look at it, and it'll be on file for another month. The presentation tonight is to give you kind of a high-level summary overview of what the budget looks like. And anyone who would like to submit comments on the budget can come to the township or submit them to supervisor@cunninghamtownship.org. So the township's mission is focused on equity. Next slide, please. There you go. So we make sure that all the property owners pay their fair share, and we look to redistribute a small amount of property taxes to serve the poorest of the poor. Next slide. Our total tax income, we now have the updated levy numbers. They're a little bit higher than anticipated, so we went up 34,000 to 1.184 million. That comes to about $28 per person per year, about $6 per month per household. So it's a very small part of the pie, but it has a large impact. Next slide. Other sources of income, our total income is $1.26 million. Our Social Security reimbursements, interest from our bank accounts, which are doing much better these days, and we did launch an angel donor fund, and we've had several $1,000s donated this year, and are budgeting $4,000 for next year. I'm going to talk just a little bit about the supervisor side, and then I will pass it off to Wayne, who has a couple of slides about the assessor side. The township is the last safety net for our low-income neighbors. We are independent, so when there are other budget crises like the state budget crisis, we are not affected by that. We're personal. We do face-to-face handling of hundreds of contacts a year, and we're local, so we can identify and fill the gaps right here in Urbana. Next slide. We're focused on the roots. What's that? Oh. One more slide, please. We are focused on the roots of poverty, which are employment, distribution, and discrimination. So we look to help people get into employment. We provide a small support, redistributive support for people when they're facing gaps, and we address discrimination, especially in housing and employment. Urbana has a very robust anti-discrimination law, and it's important that the businesses and landlords follow that law. Next slide. I'm just going to do a quick overview of general assistance and the budgetary impacts for this next year. General assistance is temporary support for residents who are disabled or out of work. So those who are out of work typically find work, and those who are disabled eventually get on federal payments. We have a community work program partnership with Salt and Light and also the healthcare consumers. We right now have 114 participants, 24 are homeless. That's down quite a bit, as we've found that our homeless participants have a hard time participating in the community work program. So we're looking to kind of survey that and understand. I think at one point was over 50 of our participants. We have served 237 so far in this fiscal year. This is an important piece for the budget. We received a letter from the township officials of Illinois saying that there's a recommendation to go up to 304 per month. That's a DHS recommendation as well as the supervisor's recommendation. I've spoken with Andy Kornstrom, and both offices are budgeting 304. That also generally is a good idea because it helps us keep up with inflation. The general assistance payments have been woefully behind inflation for some time. So I think we're looking at about $400,000 budgeted in direct support this next year, and that would estimate so we would have 110 average participants, which I think is pretty spot on, unless we see some kind of terrible recession. Next slide, please. So this is a graph of all the general assistance clients at Cunningham Township since 1996. Thanks to our stats intern for putting this together, Alan Axelrod. So essentially you'll see it does bump up and down. I'm going to go to a next graph that actually puts it against poverty so you can see. But we see, it started below 50, jumped up to 113. That was right after that recession that we saw in 01-02, came back down, and then we saw another recession in 2008, went up quite substantially at that time, and then dropped down pretty significantly, and since I became supervisor has come kind of back up to historic averages. If you look at the county poverty rate, which is the red line, and the national poverty rate, that is the yellow line, you can see that Champaign County really, in terms of poverty rate, was on par with the nation until about 2004. And then there's a pretty significant divergence. I'd be curious about that, and I'd like to know more. We're kind of digging in that there's You know, and you can see that although the poverty rate did go up after that time frame, it was more of a gentle curve, whereas at the county, we've seen some jagged edges. Our caseload then went up shortly after that, you know, kind of steadily after the 2008 recession. Next slide. Rental assistance, we started this program, we're shifting the name from homeless assistance to rental assistance, partly because we are in the process of launching a countywide program with Regional Plan Commission and the City of Champaign Township, so we're going to kind of use a single brand and word. There will be one application, there'll be one set of criteria, one process, no wrong door. There will be a press release about this soon, so I don't have a whole lot of other details to share, but I'm really excited. This is a bucket that other entities like churches, Rotary clubs, and other groups can actually put money into that is then administered by the townships and RPC. So it takes that administrative burden off of other groups that are already doing this in an ad hoc manner. So I'm very excited to see this program grow, and this was really an initiative of Cunningham Township, and we've been able to bring in our partners and grow this. So we basically do eviction prevention. We also move the homeless into housing. We have to show income of at least twice rent. We give $600 maximum. That will remain consistent going into the new year and will be consistent with our partners. If the town board on the other side of Wright Street approves, and they can access it only once every 2 years. Next slide. This should say rental assistance. We have served 182 households since December, since we started the process in 2017. You can see the breakdown here. It's really pretty incredible. We've served 420 people, including 215 children. Been served by this program, and we estimate we've spoken to landlords. I actually presented to landlords who are very pleased with this program a few weeks back. In part because it costs about $1,000 before staffing costs and other costs to evict a person from their housing, and that's not something that's typically recouped if somebody does not have the income. So essentially, we've saved about $122,000 if we consider there's been 122 households served. And if it's about $1,000 per household. We've spent about $61,000 to date, and we budgeted $72,000 for about 120 households. We're anticipating 10 per month. That may be a little high, but it could be low if we see a lot of people coming over from our PC's program. Right now, there hasn't been a real clear referral process, so we're budgeting a little high on that. Next slide. You've seen this one before, but this is what rent burden looks like. Rent burden means that you're paying over 30% of your income in housing. You can see the U.S. on the left, the county, the red part is the rent burden part. Urbana's rent burden, and Champaign, and actually Champaign's is pretty startling in terms of the rent burden in the city of Champaign. That said, the next slide is interesting because it shows that eviction rates are actually low in our community compared to the nation. So we talked about poverty rates being higher, but eviction rates being lower. We do use eviction rates as a metric of the success. We'd like to see the eviction rates in Urbana and Champaign and throughout the county go down as a result of the rental assistance programs that we're facing. And especially reaching out to landlords, which we have done and will continue to do, so that they can refer applicable participants to our program rather than take them to court. That said, we cannot help people who do not have income, so we'll still see some level of eviction. Just the next slide shows centralized intake for the homeless. In the last fiscal year recorded, had 2,800 calls and 250 households assessed. Next slide. I'm still waiting for updated numbers. They should come out soon from the schools, although we have 650 school-age children registered in 15-16, and that was up from about 555 2 years before. So I'd like to see if that's going up or down. We should have updated numbers. Next slide. The state of shelter, as you've heard me talk about, there is no same-day shelter for women with children, and there is no year-round shelter for men and women. So our budget right now sets aside $50,000 for emergency shelter. We do not have an operator for that, but we've set it aside And we continue to work at the continuum of care and also with a shelter design team that we convene to look at the options going forward. Next slide. Social service is an important partnership with the City of Urbana. We provide grants to nonprofits serving low-income residents of Urbana. And right now, we're serving 21 agencies, I think, across the grant project. We're keeping the amount steady at 175 from Township. We are proposing that we hold aside, at this point, $38,000 in rapid response funds. I believe in at your last meeting, you asked for, as a council, you asked for a process, and so after we get through this budget season, we'd like to come back to you with a process for rapid response funds. We really want to focus, from the Township perspective, focus grants on extending the work of Township and specifically on Urbana residents. So really trying to do with our money what we cannot do in-house. And make sure that our Urbana residents are seeing an improvement or an enhancement through those dollars and that investment. Next slide. Other programs, just briefly, we do advocacy, SOAR, which is focused on helping people, especially at risk of homelessness or homeless, get Social Security disability payments. We have a shelter design team focused on building a same-day shelter for women, children, and transgendered folks. And all three of those do not have any direct program expense. I bring them because they don't really show up in the budget. They show up as staff time. And we have added a pretty robust internship program. So we're looking at 7 interns next year, primarily or partly through a partnership with the U of I School of Social Work. The U of I would give full-time interns, and then the other interns basically work between 10 and 20 hours a week, depending on their schedules. The Township Garden, next slide, Greens on Green, we have $4,500 for what we anticipate to be 8 to 10 events. Each day about every week we have someone else asking to partner with us, so it might be closer to 10 to 12, but we're looking to, for a very small investment, be able to bring our neighbors together in community. Next slide. This will be my last slide before I pass it to Wayne. Just some financial issues I think that are important to look on the horizon. We saw that the general assistance rolls plummeted, and at that time the town board reduced the levy for general assistance. And I think the issue that we're crunched with is that really the number of general assistance participants who are entitled to that direct assistance is larger than at the time of that reduction. And so as a result, our general assistance payments, just the direct, not staff, not paper clips, just the actual direct payments are greater than the total general assistance levy. We are under tax caps. That limits our allowable increase. Rental assistance is on high demand, and it's also high impact, so we are loath to remove that from the future. Honestly, between rental assistance and social service funding, I feel like the rental assistance is of greater impact at this point. That said, I'd like to preserve both, but we do need to make sure that social service funding is targeted. We had significant, this came up in the last month as we looked at our IMRF, which is our retirement fund. There were significant losses in the market. I think the market was 4.38% loss total. We had 4.31%, but that means that we've drained down our retirement, and we are looking to budget to replenish that in fiscal year 20. It's not in the budget you currently have because we're in the process of kind of doing some tweaks, which we will send out in advance. But we may budget up to $100,000 to replenish where it was a pretty significant loss. We do have at the township a savings that allows us space to plan for the future. That's why we're trying to open this conversation now, because we're not in a crisis situation, but we do have some important financial considerations on the horizon. With that, I'm wondering if you should take questions, or you want to hear from Wayne and then we take questions. How would you like to do that, Mayor?
Why don't we go ahead and do questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got one. Just wanted a little bit of background information maybe about the slide that you showed that you are working in collaboration with the Regional Planning Commission on providing services. Are they referring people to you? Are they acting as a referral base, or are they actually supplying funding for homelessness or whatever service?
So the Regional Plan Commission has historically had what is called a homeless prevention grant from the state. It provides about $55,000, about $5,000 of that goes to administration, and then $50,000 goes to actually pay off rental arrears. So they're putting $50,000 in the bucket. We're suggesting $72,000 because the state actually released more funds in that budget, so we may see that they had budgeted for $50,000, but we may see an increase. That'll be part of the press release that we're putting together and trying to figure out. And then Andy has budgeted a certain amount for Champaign. So I think the last I looked, we were sitting close to about $160,000 in rental assistance, which is great because our community used to sit around $40,000. So it's a big increase as we have worked to partner. So it's, to answer your question, it's not just referrals, it's cash assistance as well.
Right. So you're also matching it or exceeding it because you have funding also set aside for that as well.
Correct, and we're doing it based on the demand that we're seeing come in. And so we're treating this program as a program where RPC is typically given out money until they didn't have it, and so each month they would run out of money within the first day of phone calls, whereas we've been offering it continuously. So if we find that the demand increases how much money we're able to provide, we would have to tailor back the rules to kind of pull back the rules, or we'd have to put more income in either from community partners or from the levy. And certainly in this next year, we're pursuing the community partner approach, a slight increase in what is budgeted, but also looking to community partners.
Eric?
What is actually, in dollar terms, how constrained are you by the tax caps? Is there any room to get back some of that levy?
Well, we're limited to, and I'm going to call Wayne off the bench for this because I will quote the wrong numbers, but I believe we're limited to the cost of living. Is it 2.1%? So we're limited to 2.1% plus new construction. So new things that are put on the tax rolls, we can get an additional support, which of course, we're always happy to see Urbana develop because that brings in additional. But basically we're limited in the tens of thousands of what we can increase in a given year. I mean, that's kind of like the plain speak about it, is it, we're not talking, we can't get that $150,000 back. There's no way. I mean, we'd have to have an explosion of in Urbana beyond what we have seen. So we're not going to, we won't see that. If all of the Carl properties were put back on the rolls, we'd get the $150,000 back. All of them, not some of them. So that gives you a sense of the perspective.
Okay, but with the present evaluations, it's the order of magnitude is tens of thousands.
It's
that
tens
we
of
could
thousands,
possibly
yeah.
get.
So in a given year, we can, we may see an increase of somewhere between 40 and 60,000 in terms of the levy. And if, as you know, basically that's inflationary costs. So if we've done what we can to control staffing costs, but we do need to provide raises, and as the cost of bread goes up, so does the wages, and then health insurance is a big area, and the other costs. So tax caps really provides for that inflationary. It doesn't provide for program expansion or, for example, right now we're seeing across the country and in our community some pretty significant impacts around housing insecurity. So, we're not able to be responsive under the current levy with that.
Mary Alice?
So you had mentioned that our levy is not keeping up with the amount that we're spending, right? So the GA is not. And in this new memo, you're proposing that we increase it to 304, 306, something like that. I think there was an original increase to, don't quote me, 284 or something. I can't remember what it was last time. So here's my question. What does it mean for the bottom line? How much now are we going to be out of alignment in terms of what we're able to bring in terms of the tax levy and what you're proposing?
Yep.
To
So, first off, the tax cap is for the town fund and general assistance fund in total. So that's important. And then we have some discretion about moving funds around. So, you know, one option is we're able to move more out of town fund into GA as needed. The issue is that, and Wayne will speak to this, at least in the next, as we approach a quad year, the investment needed on the assessor's side is greater for those quad years, and there's some, and I think all taxing bodies will benefit from some of that work. So we're needing to keep that investment in the town fund at a level that's similar to what we've had rather than shifting it into GA. So that's just one piece of the equation. I think looking forward, and Wayne and I have had a number of conversations about how to kind of, after the quad year, you know, tailor that back. But still, there's certain basic functions of the township that are needed, and, you know, largely they're in the assessor's side to make that function. So to answer your question, what we're looking at right now is with now that we have our tax levy solidified, we're looking at approximately $400,000 in tax levy in the GA fund, which at the 304 rate, we have $400,000 in personal allowances. So, you know, this doesn't include the interns, it doesn't include the rental assistance of $72,000. It doesn't include any of the staffing costs, which are appropriately, our caseworkers are in the general assistance fund. That's where they belong because they are case managing those programs exclusively. But anyone else who's, you know, in administration, I have under the supervisors. That's really just me and my office administrator in the supervisors fund. So, you know, basically, the overall, now the GA fund has other sources of input, so we have about $440,000 we're looking at in income, and we are looking at, and I'll get to this includes the IMRF spent down, but we're looking at $850,000 in expenses. Now there's again a couple of one-time chunks in that in terms of some one-time expenses, so that's not, you know, an overall picture.
So just let me stop you for 1 second
Yeah.
so I'm clear.
Yep.
So you're saying we're spending double the amount of money that we're bringing in for the GA fund, is that
For
correct?
the GA fund for this year anticipated, if we do.
So an
a
additional 400,000 that would be taking out of savings in order.
Correct. Yes. And I just want to remind the town fund that there is a law about how much we can have in savings, and the cap that can be in savings. And one of the things that we're doing right now is some long-term financial planning to make use of some of those savings, both to leverage our partners to come to the table and contribute, as well as to spend down some of our IMRF liabilities. So one of the things we're doing in our office is I've asked if we could do something that's more of a 5-year financial plan rather than just a 1-year-to-year financial plan that really looks at different scenarios going forward. So that's something we'd like to share with the town board, so that we can take out those one-time expenditures and really look at our overall, kind of standard expenditures and standard income.
So I think last time that we talked, last year when we were going over the budget and talking about deficit spending, you had said that savings would be gone in 3 years. Is that still the status with basically spending double than what we're bringing in?
Yeah, if we continue. Now, we will not be spending double every year. So I just want to be clear. But yeah, essentially we would move through those savings in that time frame. We put some aside for a capital fund, and and I pulled out some of the monies that are set aside for a potential tax refund in that. So those are kind of two aspects to this scenario that are important to look at.
And one final question.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Moving the proposal on the GA amount, what's the difference between what we're currently spending and what is proposed?
It is, so we're looking at 401 up from 350, so about $50,000.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I just do want to note on personal allowances that we had budgeted 412 for this year, and right now we're at about 300,000. So we are under. I I'd like to generally run under, as we have on a number of these line items. So I don't know if we'll hit that $400,000 mark for next year, but I certainly would like to budget for it.
Any other questions? Okay, so,
Wayne had a portion of, he just has a couple of slides. Okay.
thank you.
Can you go to the next slide? So first, I'd like to start with making an announcement. Charlie came over to the office today, and he actually officially swore in as deputy assessors. TMA Singh and Laura Sandiford, they're both in the audience today, and Will Harris as chief deputy assessor. So that became officially, they took their oaths, they signed all their paperwork, so they're officially ours.
Congratulations.
So can we go to next slide? So I know you guys have a long day, so I'll be brief. The assessor's office goal is to value property accurately and fairly. Our office also provides information to the public and educates taxpayers about the Illinois property tax system. We also discuss available exemptions with property owners, as well as answer any questions that you might have regarding how we derive property values. So for fiscal year 20, next slide. We have some, I'm just going to highlight on the biggest differences from last year. We have a personnel other line that has $71,000. That would be to maintain our current internship program, as well as to hire one full-time person for 1 year whose sole job would be to measure and view all of our residential property. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next slide. $30,000 for appraisals. Oh, wait, can we go back? Which is up from about $6,000. And that is because I anticipate a large number of commercial appeals next year, and we'll get into that later. And a big increase in postage because next year is our quad year. So every 4 years, my office is responsible for viewing, identifying, viewing, and basically reassessing every property in the township. So we're going to do we're hoping to do a really big assessment project next year. We call it in our office internally Operation Fair Assessment. So next slide. So the big increase in personnel. So right now we have 3 interns. We want to keep them on for 1 more year. Basically, we paid for them this year because the chief deputy position remained vacant for the first 6 months of the year. William started in January, and that's how we paid for it. But now, with us being fully staffed, and we still have a lot of work to catch up, we want to maintain an internship program, as well as hire one full-time person for 1 year, and that's, we won't need them after the year. And then William can talk more about that.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can I do something slightly different and pass y'all something?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, turn it to the back side. There's something I circled on the back of each page. These are your property record cards that have been maintained by your city.
Township.
Or township.
Township.
Plenty more of these.
All of you have a random card that
Can you make sure you speak into the microphone so folks at home can hear?
Okay, each of you has a random card that was pulled. We didn't go into these neighborhoods we're going to pick the ones with issues. Someone other than Wayne or myself pulled each of these cards. If you flip to the very back, I circled something. That shows you the last time someone viewed that property. Does anyone have a 2019? Does anyone have a 2018? 1. 2017, 2016, so on and so forth. I bet you the majority of you have a 2011. Am I right?
No, 2015.
Okay. Your guidelines say you should, the quad year which he was speaking of that comes up in 2020, you should view all properties at least once every 4 years. Clearly, by the evidence I've shown, this hasn't been done. So for a staff of 4 people, even with 3 interns, to measure all these residential properties could take 2 to 3 years, because there are other things we do throughout the year. In order for us to do it in the shortest amount of time to meet all the deadlines, we would have to bring someone whose sole job would be to go out and measure these properties. Like, we have some of those property record cards may actually be accurate, have the information we need on it, but we don't know that. In these folders, these are pictures. These say from 2008 to 2010, but they were taken in 1996. I was born in 88, and I don't think I look the same as I did in 88, so I'm assuming in 96 I don't look the same as I do in 2019. So things are constantly changing, and these things have not been maintained. So us bringing on, first I say keeping the internship program, because something we've done different that we kind of didn't touch on, the 3 interns we currently have now are all from the supervisor side now. We've decided to partner with them as far as using some of their constituents, and it's not just giving them some work, it's also teaching them a skill, because most of these people don't have access to a computer or haven't been using a computer as efficiently as people in the workforce. So this is their opportunity to get that knowledge, get that training. There are plenty of assessment jobs out there. There are plenty of openings as we're trying to open up for 1 year for someone to come in and do measurement. Now imagine if a constituent had that training already. That would be perfect fit. You're already in Urbana. We could help them at the same time as them helping us get this information corrected. The full-time person, which I would directly manage, would literally do nothing but go out and measure these properties. Can you go to the next slide? Okay. The big thing that pushed a lot of this, as you can see where our median level of assessment is for commercial properties. I know we've spoken a lot about the median level of assessments throughout time, but you see it's a 24.11. We called a meeting last week, right, Wayne?
Last week.
Yeah, okay, last week with commercial property owners to discuss this situation. 33.33 is the acceptable standard. You're 38.24% below that, just in your commercial properties. So because of that, it's not an issue of residential is off or commercial is off. We have a total of problems. So that's why this new person is kind of really important. It's not just bringing a college student in who can just type something into a computer. We need people who actually understand what they see when they go out into this field. They know how to approach a property. They know what the characteristics of a property are. A 2-story, a split level, the difference in value between the two, because they're not the same. In bringing all these things together, I think it'll benefit the community as a whole, because as he said, this Operation Fair Assessment, it started as a joke amongst us. Like, oh, you know, Operation Fair Assessment, just something we were saying, because what we do is fair assessments. Like, the oath we took today, it was so hilarious, because it's like, oh, we already do this, but now you're making us take a notes for it. But hey, I appreciate it. I'm glad you guys did it. I like the certificate. It's somewhere back there. But on a serious note, it's a problem that we need to fix going forward, because I think over time it could balance out the tax burdens on certain people. Some neighborhoods are taxed too high, some neighborhoods are taxed low. And that's partially starting with the values that have not been maintained the correct way. Thank you. That's something you wanted to say.
I take it. Can you go to that next slide? So going further with what William is saying, like, if I were just to like do a factor for commercial, right, and to get them to that median to 32 1/3, it would be a 38.24% increase. And I'm not saying it's going to be 38%. It won't be 38%, but it's going to be closer to 38 than it is to 0. And because if you can go to the next slide, because of that, I'm expecting quite a few appeals on the commercial side, which is why we have the increase in the appraisal line. And then just the last. So like William said, we do fair assessments. This is an Operation Fair Assessment. To get the job done, we need to have integrity in our data, and just right now we don't. And that's why we need to go back out, we need to measure, we need to view, inspect, appraise.
Any question, are you finished?
Yeah.
Okay, any quick questions? Sharice and then Mary Alice.
I guess my question is going to be, so you're saying that the property taxes are going to go up? I have a couple of questions, actually. Property taxes will probably go up 38 point something. No.
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 Explain it to me.
You-
Somebody.
You take it.
Okay. Not the property taxes themselves, because of course, as the values increase, it changes the total value of the Cunningham Township.
Okay.
So the levy is then divided differently. Like, because you'll pay more of a portion, then you don't have to pay less of a portion.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to even out. If you owe us $1, instead of us keep getting 50 cents from you and we're going over here taking the other 50 cents from these guys, we're saying, no, we'll take the $1 from you and we'll get theirs straight. So it's not necessarily going to be because there's a 38% factor. It's a factor of value, not necessarily a factor of the taxes.
Okay, my other question is, how is this balancing of the values going to affect people who are who have homestead exemption, or I think that's what it's called, the seniors that get particular property tax breaks? How's that going to affect them?
So the factor mentioned in the slides that we just said, that was just for commercial properties. And again, like to get it, the commercial median right now is 2411. It should be 33 1/3. If we're going to factor 2411 to get to 33 1/3, we'd have to do 38.2427%. It's not going to be a 38% factor, but it is going to be significant. But again, that's just for commercial property owners.
So
right?
with these commercial property owners that will be reevaluated and reevaluated and evaluated or whatever, if in fact there is an increase in what their property taxes are, is that going to be something that will be done little by little, or are you just it's gonna be one big whopping, here you go?
So can you repeat I just want to make sure I understand your question.
I'm wondering if their tax bill, if, let's say there is an increase, are you just going to, is their tax bill just going to be increased, or will it be done incrementally?
Well, I can say last year, a lot of commercial properties got a 8.45% increase. It was the first increase that most commercial properties got in about 8 years. It didn't move the needle in terms of the median. So, and again, I've not decided on what it's going to be. It's going to be significant. We've already tried breaking it out, but we have to try something else to move the needle. And then again, this will be for 2019 pay 20, 2020 pay 2021 as our quad. You know, we're going to be doing reassessments. So at that point, you know, it wouldn't be a uniform increase or decrease, but the numbers will fall where they fall. I'll give you a perfect example. We had one neighborhood of condos with capstone quarters. It's on Lincoln Avenue. That's its own neighborhood, and that hadn't been looked at in some time. And we went to go see where the value should fall. The average difference is about 25%, or I should say it's more like the median difference. Some of them are more than that, some of them are less, but you know, the numbers fall where they fall. This is what happens when you're not paying attention to where your values are in these different neighborhoods, right? It causes these big increases. If someone went for 10 years without an increase, you know, values have changed obviously in 10 years. If you look at some of the individual parcels, you will see that.
Okay. Mary Allison and Eric, and I would remind folks that we've got a packed agenda tonight, so if these questions aren't directly related to budget decisions, I'd say let's hold off, and we could even schedule another time for a discussion of how this all is going to come together.
All right, well, with that in mind, I will let my assessment questions go, but I do have one question that relates to the budget.
Great.
So, kind of, sort of. When you say go out and measure people's houses, you're not going to be knocking on their doors, asking to come into their house and measuring it, correct?
No,
I just want the public to know that that's not what you're saying.
No.
Can you- so can you clarify what that means?
Exterior of the home.
Okay, so,
So we will go up to the property, right, to measure the walls, but we stay on the outside. If
will
we're not
knock on your
allowed
door.
to go to, if we're not allowed to go up to the property, then we'll measure from the corner, but then it's less accurate. So,
I think it's clear we need an education in general on how this all is going to work. So I
You're
know
more
you'll
than
be
welcome
happy to
to
do
come
that.
visit.
Okay. Eric,
Yes.
did you have a budget question?
Well, it's got implications for the budget. I guess, first of all, I have two, and I think they're quick, but you are by statute required, we are to issue a bill that reflects the assessed value and the multiplier. I mean, you can't do anything else. So if you assess it at 40% more than the last time it was assessed, the property tax bill has to go up by 40%. Is that true or
No,
not true?
not at all.
Not at all.
So
Okay.
again, I just deal with assessments. You guys deal with levies, right? And it's the combination of the two that produces the tax bill, right?
Okay.
So I could increase everybody's assessment, every single parcel by 40%,
Yeah.
right? And if every unit of government chooses to keep their levy flat, nobody's tax bill will change.
Okay. And if it's possible to answer quickly, by what procedure did you make the judgment that our commercial properties were 24%?
We ran sales ratio studies. So we go back, we do a 3-year sales ratio study. We compare sales to assessments, come up with a ratio. So if
Okay.
something sells for $300,000,
Okay.
it should be assessed at $100,000 to get to 33 1/3, but it was below that.
Got it.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Wayne. Thanks, William.
Thank you.
Excellent presentations from everyone. Any summary before we move on to the next item?
I'm just pulling up the agenda. Okay, yes, and next time. No,
Okay.
I believe that's it. If there are not any other questions about the budget, I just want to let folks know that we would like to get the updated budget to you, not the Thursday before you take a vote, but it's our intention to have it to you at least a week, if not, 10 days, 14 days beforehand. And I will be accompanied with a memo that explains exactly what has changed between the two. So that's what I did last year as well, so you can anticipate that. And feel free to reach out to us with any questions by emails, great, or phone.
Great. Thank you. Okay, next up is a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Section 2C11 of the Open Meetings Act, 5 ILCS 120/2C11, to discuss intervention in pending litigation.
Well, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Jared, seconded by Dean. All those in favor? Or do we need a roll call? Roll call, please.
Trustees Hazen,
Yes, here.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
and Wu.
yes.
Okay. That motion passes. And for the public, we will go upstairs to meet in closed session. This shouldn't take too long. When we come down, there are 4 resolutions to act on, which should be done fairly quickly. But we will be upstairs for a little bit.
There it is.
Okay. Moved by Eric, seconded by Jared. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Hazen,
Here. Yes, sorry, present, whatever.
Hersey,
Yes. It'd be yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next up is Resolution T 2019-06-010R, a resolution authorizing request to intervene in formal hearing with the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board, parcel number 932121176013.
I make a motion that the township approve that.
I'll second it.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Jared. All those in favor, or any discussion? Mary Alice?
I was just wondering if you could give us a little bit of background on this case?
Am I allowed to talk about the other ones as well, or just this one?
You can talk about, why don't you talk about all three?
All right.
Because they're all
So,
related.
so all three of these cases are taxpayers who have appealed to the Property Tax Appeal Board, and what I'm asking you to do is to allow the township to intervene. We need to pass a resolution to do that. And what this does is allow us to have rights with PTAP to intervene in these cases. So there are two family videos, and the other one is a apartment complex.
So just to be clear, they've appealed their
So they've-
assessment, and then you're asking us to vote for us to then engage in that appeal, or?
Right, so they've appealed, and this is for last year's assessment, so 2018, pay 19. They've appealed my assessment to the Champaign County Board of Review. For whatever reason, they didn't like the decision they got there, so they appealed the Board of Review's decision to the Property Tax Appeal Board. And what we're asking you to do is to allow the township to intervene.
Eric?
Yeah, just to clarify, intervention in this case means defending the decision you made to assess a certain value. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Wayne? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Next up is Resolution T 2019-06-011R, resolution authorizing the request to intervene, formal hearing with the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board for parcel number 93-21-21-176-023.
All right, again, I'll make the motion that we appeal.
I'll second that.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Mary Alice. Any discussion or questions? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Last up is Resolution Number T 2019-06-012R, resolution authorizing request to intervene in formal hearing with the Illinois Property Tax Appeal Board, parcel number 91-2105-477-028.
Motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Sharice. Any discussion or questions? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Hazen,
Yes.
Hersey,
Yes.
Jacobson,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Roberts,
Yes.
and Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. With no further business before the town board, the Cunningham Town Board is adjourned. And we'll begin immediately with the city council meeting.